$1,840. That is what is sitting in your checking account on the morning you turn 36. Not your savings. Not your retirement account. Your checking account. The number that is supposed to carry your real life until the next paycheck. And before you even open the app, you already know it is lower than it should be. You know because your body tells you first. It is Sunday. You are on the couch with your laptop balanced on a pillow, some half-forgotten show glowing on the TV, your partner asleep in the next room, and you tell yourself you are only going to check one account. Just one. Just for a second. But that is never how this goes. A minute later, you are 3 tabs deep, moving between checking, credit card, savings, retirement, back to checking again. Like maybe the numbers will rearrange themselves if you look at them from enough angles. Your salary is $81,200 a year. On paper, that sounds stable. Respectable. Even. It sounds like the kind of income that should create breathing room. But paper is generous in ways real life is not. $81,200 becomes about $6,766 a month before taxes, and around $4,890 after everything is taken out. Rent is $1,850. Car payment, $410. Insurance, $240. Minimum payment on the credit card, $175. Groceries, $520. The gym membership you have not used in 4 months, $59. Streaming subscriptions you forgot you were still paying for, $61. By the time all of that clears, you are supposed to have $1,575 left. But your bank statement says you spent $1,690 in a category labeled Other. Other. That word should offend you more than it does. Because other is where your future has been quietly disappearing. You stare at the number long enough for it to stop feeling abstract. It is not one emergency. It is not one reckless weekend. It is not one catastrophic mistake you can point at and say, there, that was the problem. It is worse than that. It is ordinary. It is delivery fees. It is quick lunches. It is the app subscription you downloaded once and forgot. It is the late fee from a bill you thought you paid. It is the kind of spending that slips past your attention because each piece is too small to trigger alarm. That is what makes it dangerous. You scroll back further than you meant to. 6 months. Then 12. Then 18. You begin highlighting charges you do not remember making. A $14.99 subscription from an app you used for 3 days. A $22 late fee that never should have existed. A recurring $8.99 merchant name that means absolutely nothing to you no matter how many times you read it. None of it is dramatic enough to become a story. And that is exactly why it has been allowed to stay. There is no villain here. Just the cost of not looking closely enough for a very long time. You close the laptop. The room goes blue in the light of the paused TV, and something inside you goes very still. Not panicked. Not even ashamed. Exactly. Just still. The kind of stillness that happens right before denial runs out of places to hide. And this is the part nobody says clearly enough. Starting at 36 is not too late, but it is also not early. Both things are true at once. You are not ruined. You are not doomed. But you are also not young enough to keep pretending that another 5 years of drifting will somehow count as a strategy. The people who started at 24 got 12 years of compounding you will never get back. That is not negativity. That is arithmetic. Grieve it for one night if you need to. Be angry at yourself. Be embarrassed. Mourn the version of you that could have started sooner and did not. But after that, you move. Because the only thing more expensive than a late start is an even later one. And here is the part worth remembering. You are 36, not 16. You are not learning discipline from scratch. You are not building a self from the ground up. You have a decade of professional life behind you. You know how to solve problems. You know how to sit through discomfort. You know how systems work once you finally decide to study them. You are not behind because you are incapable. You are behind because you looked away. Those are 2 very different problems. One of them can be fixed. If you invest $750 a month from this point forward and average a 9% annual return, you can end up with a little over $1.3 million by 65. Not because you became special. Not because you found some secret. Because time and consistency still work, even when you start later than you wanted to. But $750 a month has to come from somewhere. So the first job is not becoming wealthy. The first job is creating margin. The leak is $115 a month. That is what the numbers show. $115 that has been escaping so quietly you barely felt it. Over a year, that is $1,380. Over a decade, invested, it becomes something much larger. And that is the shift you begin to understand. Tiny amounts do not stay tiny when they are repeated. You cancel the gym membership. There is $59 back. You spend 20 miserable minutes on hold with your insurance company, then another 30 comparing rates, and you switch providers. There is $34 more. You sell the road bike in the garage that you rode twice last summer and kept mostly because selling it would force you to admit the fantasy version of yourself was not coming. It goes for $310. You start packing lunch 4 days a week instead of buying it. Another roughly $160 a month. Nothing about this feels glamorous. Nothing about this feels like the internet version of financial transformation. Nobody is clapping because you cancelled a gym membership and made turkey sandwiches. But one Tuesday morning, you open your savings app and see $2,140 sitting there. It is not a lot. That is what makes it so strangely emotional. Because it is the first number in a long time that feels like protection instead of damage. You do not celebrate. There is no speech. No dramatic moment. But something in your chest loosens. Just a little. Direction has changed. That matters more than speed at first. At 37, you automate $500 a month into a Roth IRA and $250 into a high-yield savings account. You do it on payday, before the money has time to become psychologically available. That part matters. If you wait to save what is left over, life will always find a use for what is left over. So you reverse the order. Future first. Present second. The money leaves without asking how you feel about it, which turns out to be useful because your feelings are inconsistent and your transfers are not. Some months are tight. Some months feel unfair. But the system holds. Then life tests it. The water heater goes on a Thursday morning in November. You hear the strange hum first, then the hiss, then the realization that this is about to cost real money. The plumber quotes $1,650 for a full replacement. 2 years earlier, that would have gone straight on the credit card, and you would have called it unavoidable while quietly signing yourself up for months of interest. This time, you pay from savings. The account drops. Your stomach tightens as you watch the balance fall. But something does not happen, and that matters more than what does. You do not go into debt. You do not begin the next 6 months underwater because your house needed to keep functioning. You rebuild the emergency fund over the next 3 months, one automatic transfer at a time, and in the middle of rebuilding it, you learn one of the most important lessons of adult money. Progress is not never needing to use the fund. Progress is using the fund for what it was built for and not collapsing because of it. Later that year, you sit down and read your 401k statement. Not glance at it. Read it. You find a fund charging 1.2% in annual fees. The number looks harmless, almost decorative, the way small percentages always do when they are printed in tiny font. But then you run the math. Over decades, that fee can cost you tens of thousands. Maybe more. Money leaving your future so quietly you never noticed it was gone. You spend half a Saturday afternoon on hold, another hour reading fund documents you only half understand, and eventually you move your money into a low-cost index fund charging 0.04%. Nothing in your visible life changes. No better car. No nicer dinner. No congratulatory text. But a huge amount of future money just stopped leaking away. That is one of the strange truths about building wealth in your late 30s. Some of the biggest wins are invisible. They do not feel like winning at all. They feel like paperwork. They feel like patience. They feel like bothering to understand a sentence you used to skip. At 38, the shift becomes psychological. You are in a hardware store on a Saturday, choosing between 2 pairs of work boots for a home project. One pair is $58. The other is $145. Better built, real support, 10-year warranty. 5 years ago, you would have bought the cheaper pair automatically because cheap felt responsible. Cheap felt like discipline. Cheap felt like what people in your situation were supposed to choose. But now you pause. You do cost per wear in your head. You think in years instead of this week. You think about replacing the cheap pair twice, maybe 3 times, and what that really costs. You buy the $145 boots. And sitting in the parking lot afterward, hands on the steering wheel, you realize something subtle but important has changed. You are no longer making every decision based on the next paycheck. You are beginning to think like someone who expects to be financially alive in the future. Nobody teaches you that in one moment. It grows quietly, like posture. At 39, your company announces layoffs on a Wednesday afternoon. The email is careful and sanitized, full of words like restructuring and alignment, the kind of language that tries to make fear sound strategic. By 4 o'clock the office has gone quiet in the very specific way that means everyone is messaging someone privately. You go home and run your numbers. Your emergency savings covers 4 months of expenses. Your investments are there if life gets uglier. You are not invincible, but you are not one missed paycheck away from panic either. And that difference is hard to describe to anyone who has never lived without it. It is not confidence exactly. It is not peace. It is space. Space to think. Space to react like an adult instead of an emergency. 2 weeks later, the cuts happen. 14 people are gone. You keep your job, and relief arrives hand in hand with guilt. But beneath both is something colder and clearer. This will happen again someday, to you or near you. Stability is never a permanent gift from an employer. The only real defense is time purchased by your own accounts. So you raise your emergency fund target from 4 months to 7. You do not stop investing to do it. You just keep building. At 40, temptation starts looking more sophisticated. Your friend Devon leases a Tesla. He calls it basically owning it, which is how adults often rename expensive mistakes so they can sit beside them more comfortably. You know enough now to do the math fast. $890 a month for 72 months. Over $64,000 for a car that will be worth a fraction of that when the payments end. You sit in the passenger seat once and you feel the pull immediately. The silent cabin. The screens. The engineered sense that you have arrived somewhere important. A voice in your head says, "You have been disciplined for years now. Maybe this is what discipline was for." You do not shame yourself for wanting it. That part matters. Maturity with money is not becoming a person who never wants anything. It is becoming a person who can want something without automatically rearranging your future to get it. So you let the desire pass. You drive home in your 7-year-old Accord and instead of feeling deprived, you feel clear. The question was never whether you wanted the car. The question was whether you wanted the years it would cost. At 41, you get a promotion you did not fully expect, and your salary jumps from $89,000 to $104,000. This is one of those crossroads people rarely recognize while it is happening. The outside world calls it success. Your bank account calls it a test. Because the second the bigger paycheck hits, your brain starts shopping. Bigger apartment. Better neighborhood. Nicer car. Furniture that finally looks like the person with your new title should own. You catch yourself halfway through apartment listings, staring at a $2,400 one-bedroom with an extra room that would sit empty 95% of the year. You close the tab. Instead, you increase your 401k contribution by almost the exact percentage of the raise. You route more money into investments before you ever get used to seeing it in checking. On paper, your life looks almost unchanged. Same routines. Same car. Same apartment for a little longer. From the outside, it does not look like anything happened. Internally, you just accelerated the timeline of your future by years. Then one Tuesday in March, somewhere between meetings and ordinary work emails, your portfolio crosses $60,000. You open the app out of habit and see $61,400 staring back at you. You lock your phone and go back to work, but the number stays with you all day. Not because it means you are done. Because it means this is real now. This no longer feels like self-improvement. It feels structural. A foundation poured deep enough that the building above it might actually last. At 42, your father calls on a Sunday evening, and his voice has that careful rehearsed tone people use when they have been practicing how to ask for help. His truck needs a transmission. $3,400. He has been delaying the repair because he did not know how to say he could not cover it cleanly. You tell him not to worry about it. The next afternoon, you transfer the money without touching your investment account, without swiping a credit card, without spending the night doing damage control in your head. And what stays with you is not the amount. It is the sentence. I've got it. 5 years earlier, those words would have meant a private calculation, a hidden panic, a payment plan disguised as generosity. This time, they mean what they sound like. That is the first moment you fully understand what this has really been about. Not a number. Capacity. The ability to absorb life and still remain standing. That same year, you and your partner finally combine finances after 4 years together. It is not romantic. It is 2 laptops open at the kitchen table on a Tuesday night, both of you slightly defensive before either of you says a word. She has $11,000 in student loans. You have a store card with $2,100 still hanging on it from a bedroom set you bought 3 years ago and never mentioned because it felt too stupid to explain. There is a version of the night where both of you choose embarrassment over honesty and the whole thing turns into a fight. It almost does. But instead, after a few tense minutes, you start building a spreadsheet together. 1 tab at a time. Income. Debt. Fixed expenses. Emergency fund. Goals. The practical language of 2 adults deciding to stop hiding from reality and from each other at the same time. You combine emergency savings into 1 account. $9,200 total. You agree to send $400 a month toward her loans until they are gone. You stop disguising purchases. You stop treating secrecy like independence. And over the next 18 months, the loans disappear. Money built with another person is not just arithmetic. It is translation. It is learning how to say the scary numbers out loud before they become expensive. It is choosing teamwork over image. At 43, your portfolio generates more than $7,800 in growth in a single year without counting new contributions. Just growth. Just the machine doing what it was designed to do while you were living the rest of your life. While you slept. While you worked. While you were sick. While you forgot to check the app for days at a time. This is when compounding stops feeling like a theory you heard on podcasts and starts feeling like a force. Quiet. Unemotional. Indifferent to your mood. Rewarding repetition more than brilliance. You built that through ordinary hardship. A broken water heater. A layoff scare. A hard conversation at a kitchen table. A family emergency. A market dip. Boring transfers you made when you did not feel inspired. That is why it holds. Because it was not built on motivation. It was built on systems. At 44, the credit card is finally gone. A balance that has followed you since your late 20s disappears in one transfer. You expect the moment to feel bigger than it does, but real milestones are often quiet. They do not come with music. They come with the absence of a monthly drag you got so used to carrying that you almost forgot it was heavy. Now you have a diversified portfolio. A maxed Roth IRA. A healthy emergency fund. A small taxable brokerage account. And a strange loneliness shows up in places you did not expect. At dinner with old friends, some are in obvious financial pain. Some make more than you and spend every dollar as fast as it arrives. Some still talk about retirement like hope is a plan. You try mentioning index funds once or twice. You mention fees. You mention automating transfers. It lands nowhere. And eventually you understand something difficult but freeing. People rarely change because they were given better information. They change when reality becomes uncomfortable enough that they finally stop looking away. You cannot manufacture that moment for somebody else. You cannot lend them conviction the way you lend them money. So you stop performing discipline as an identity. You just keep living it. At 45, your daughter is born on a Wednesday in late July, 6 years after that first kitchen table spreadsheet with your partner. 2 weeks later, half asleep and still not fully adjusted to what your life has become, you open a $529 account for her before you have even finished setting up her room. $150 a month. Automated. You do the math the way you now do math about everything. 18 years at a modest return and she could have around $58,000 waiting for her before she is old enough to understand what that means. You are not trying to buy her an easy life. You are trying to move her starting line. You are trying to give her the years you did not have. And some nights at 3 a.m., when you are holding her in the dark and the house is quiet except for the tiny sounds babies make in their sleep, you think about the version of yourself at 36 sitting on that couch, staring at a $115 leak like it was too small to matter. In a way, it saved your life. Not because $115 was magic. Because that was the night you stopped being someone life kept happening to. By 46, you wake up on your birthday before coffee, before messages, before the day can begin claiming pieces of you. You lie there in the dark and think about the paused TV screen, the couch, the checking account balance, the way denial used to feel safer than honesty. Then you check the number. $310,000. Not internet rich. Not retired at 46 on a beach somewhere. Not financially free by the loudest definitions online. But real money. Working money. Liquid wealth. Protection. Options. Built from a late start. Built from an ordinary salary. Built from mistakes that did not disappear, only got answered. Built from one honest Sunday and every transfer that followed it. 8 years ago, you thought this would feel like a number. It does not. It feels like replacing a water heater without panic. It feels like surviving layoffs without collapsing. It feels like telling your father, "I've got it," and meaning every word. It feels like looking at your daughter and knowing she will begin further ahead because you were finally willing to get uncomfortable. Most of all, it feels like this. One quiet Sunday morning, years after you first opened those accounts in dread, you realize the future is no longer something that happens to you in the dark. It is something you have been building, one boring, disciplined, nearly invisible decision at a time. And that is the part people miss when they talk about money. The real transformation is not the portfolio. It is the identity. It is the moment you stop asking whether you feel motivated enough to change and start building systems that keep moving even when you do not. It is choosing the version of yourself 10 years from now over the impulse of the next 10 minutes. It is understanding that wealth, for most people, is not built in dramatic moments. It is built in the aftermath. After the shame. After the late start. After the spreadsheet. After the call you did not want to make. After the budget that made you feel small. After the month you had to begin again. After the day you realize nobody is coming to rescue you from your own patterns. And strangely, that realization is not depressing. It is power. Because if nobody is coming to save you, then nobody gets to stop you either. You can begin with $1,840 in checking. You can begin with a credit card at 22%. You can begin with embarrassment, with lost time, with bad habits, with years that should have been used better. You can begin while behind. You can begin while tired. You can begin while ashamed. You can begin long after the version of you that was supposed to have figured it out by now has clearly missed the deadline. You can still begin. And if you do it right, if you automate before you feel ready, if you learn to see leaks while they are still small, if you stop treating every want like an emergency, if you let boring consistency do the work your emotions cannot, then one day the numbers will say something your life can already feel. You are safer now. You are steadier now. You are no longer at the mercy of every broken appliance, every restructuring email, every hidden fee, every quiet family emergency, every unplanned expense, every version of yourself that used to spend first and think later. That is what you were really buying all along. Not just retirement. Not just a bigger number. But the ability to move through life without every surprise turning into damage. And all of it started the same way most real change starts. Not with confidence. Not with perfect timing. Not with some cinematic breakthrough. Just with one exhausted adult on a couch, finally opening the numbers all the way, and deciding that from this point forward, the future would no longer be something to avoid looking at.